America is home to 33 million small businesses, the beating heart of communities across the country.
And proof that the American dream is still alive.
This is a show about those dreamers and doers and the communities they serve.
Their real life stories.
Their struggles and successes.
Their grit, determination, and passion.
And the people who fight
to keep their American dream alive.
I'm Alfredo Ortiz.
I'm Elaine Parker.
And it's time for another episode of Main Street Matters,
America's small business megaphone. Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. I'm Elaine Parker with the Job Creators Network. It was a big day in the job market and for the Trump administration earlier this week. January is really off to a great start. We had a jobs report that exceeded expectations. Today, we're joined by Mike Palicz. Mike is the tax policy director at Americans for Tax Reform and a former official in the Trump administration where he worked at advancing pro-growth economic policies. He brings firsthand experience from inside the president's economic team and now leads national efforts to promote tax relief, fiscal responsibility, and private sector expansion. Mike, thanks for joining us.
Great to be with you.
Well, yesterday was a great day. It was great to see that number obviously exceeded expectations. There was all kinds of, the numbers were all over the map. I saw -10. I saw all the way to 150,000 jobs. And so we came in at 130,000. It's great. We're starting to obviously see the fruits of the policies put in place last year. What do you think that kind of signals about economic momentum in general?
Yeah, and so to be clear here, we had that large number, about 170 new jobs created, offset by 34,000 reduction in federal jobs, with the decline we've seen from the federal workforce deliberately pursued by the Trump administration. And I think that's interesting to see here, where you have the lowest level of the federal workforce being comprised of the overall labor market here since 1966. So this is a major beat on the jobs number compared to what expectations were. We saw headlines from Bloomberg about how this month was going to have zero job creation, and to essentially double what the expectation was, I think is a very good sign for the economy. When you couple that with the last 2 quarters of economic growth we've seen since the tax bill has taken effect, and I think Republicans were right this time to make sure that the provisions kicked in 2025, unlike in 2017 when we saw that the tax provisions didn't really take effect until 1 year after the bill was passed. This time we're seeing it hit the economy immediately, and that it gives great certainty towards businesses, allowing them to take advantage of provisions, allow them to expand their workforce, pay their workers more. I think that's what we're starting to see now. You saw the third quarter of 2025, nearly 4% growth, 3.8% forecasted growth for the fourth quarter right now. 2 great quarters beating expectations. Now a jobs report that beats expectations. And we had this great forecast come out from the Congressional Budget Office just yesterday, also increasing the number of expected growth coming from the tax bill, expecting that the bill itself will contribute to 0.7% of GDP growth. So I think all good numbers headed in the right direction right now.
Do you think that this jobs report is kind of a turning point in the labor market? Because the labor market had not been as strong last year. There was a lot of criticism in it. And, labor is, the jobs market is really a lagging indicator, right? Because we were seeing such great GDP numbers. The economy is strong. We were hearing about, $5 trillion in investments coming into the country because of the administration's policies. And now we finally have, a very solid jobs report. Not that we haven't created jobs, but it's a solid jobs report. Do you think that kind of signals that the job creation is actually catching up to what was happening in the broader economy?
Yeah, I think what you had doubt and hangover from the Biden administration coming into this year as well, where we look back, the third and fourth quarter of 2024 were not really great. I think, as you said, there's some lagging indicators there, time for the market to catch up, time for businesses to make their hiring decisions and want to wait and see. You had the uncertainty of whether or not the tax bill was going to be passed, whether or not these provisions would be extended. businesses now have that certainty that Congress has passed this into law and the President Trump has signed it. So they know moving forward, they have permanent tax relief that's allowing them to make their hiring and investment decisions. That's what we're really seeing. We're seeing this driven by increased investment, increased worker productivity. I thought another great point was made by Kevin Hassett, Trump's economic advisor, where he said too, part of the story has been uncertainty how the AI would be impacting the workforce, but made I think a great point that we have prime age labor participation rate increasing here as well, the highest level since 2001. So I think that's also showing that new technology like AI is actually making workers more productive, leading to younger workforce entering the work market. Right? It's not higher participation rate driven by people not retiring. It's new entrants into the market at a younger age. So I think that is great to see, another very positive sign.
I think I read, speaking of AI, I think I read that what you're seeing with companies is they're actually where they're able to use AI to replace maybe more administrative or corporate jobs. They're able to redeploy those folks into other areas or to do the AI. I mean, for those folks who are taking the time to learn how to use AI, Target, for instance, they were reducing some of their jobs within like the corporate headquarters, but taking that investment and to reinvest at the store level to improve the customer experience. So putting more into what you would call the frontline workers. Are you seeing that trend in other areas?
Yeah, well, I think a great thing to keep in mind there too, because again, to that point, in addition to being workers, we're also consumers. So we talk about affordability. There is a two-side coin. We have, of course, the lingering frustration with prices. Inflation remains a tricky item, something I think we're starting to see tackled, where you are seeing things like home mortgage rates at their 3-year low. But people still think prices are too high. The way you combat that, the other side of the coin, is wages. And under the Biden administration, you had 3.5 years where inflation outpaced wage growth. Throughout 2025, we did have 1.1% real wage growth for workers the first year of the Trump administration. We, of course, want that to be higher. And I think we're heading in the right direction. But having that real wage growth for households, again, I think being driven by increased investment, a lot of that coming from the tax bill, that's I think certainty for families, and that's they're starting to feel that growth, and then tax impacts the entire market.
Yeah, I mean, we've had a strong GDP last quarter. We're projecting a strong GDP this quarter. Interest rates are down from their high. And I think people feel like they could come down more, but at least they are down. Mortgage rates are certainly more affordable. Car loans are certainly more affordable. Gas prices are way down, particularly from their high, but they're down. And with energy being such a great input across the board, we don't see all prices coming down, but a lot of prices have come down. And I wonder if people understand that it, we may not be able to bring down all the prices, right? They may not all come down. But if we're growing wages, if we're having real wage growth, that's going to make a huge difference for people. And maybe growth is also, it's going to be a combination of growth and bringing prices down, not wages. We don't want to bring wages down, but bringing prices down and growth is how we're going to get out of this. But it is a steep hill to climb. We are digging out from a pretty deep hole.
Yeah, I actually thought this was an interesting point made by the president just a week or two ago, where he was talking. He took a little bit of heat over a comment he made on housing prices, where he said our goal isn't to bring housing prices down, and I think essentially what he's trying to get at is, well, it's affordability, right? It's he's more interested in rates. You don't want declining home value for millions of Americans across the country. What you want is you want wages increasing, you want interest rates coming down so people can afford to make their mortgage, and making it easier for people to put a down payment on a home. It was all policies being pursued by the administration. And to that point, right? We don't want stagflation for sure. What we want good supply side policy. What we're seeing that I think delivered now from the administration, why we're starting to see wages go up for families. So I think this is all good, and it's going to only be driven as we enter tax season here. we were going to see, I think, record high tax returns for people, averaging about $1,000 per household, higher than the previous tax season. And this is very interesting because during 2017, when the tax bill passed, the main Democrat attack on the bill was that people were going to see less of a tax return, and we had to explain why giving the government an interest-free loan was actually a bad thing. But this time around, people are going to have higher tax returns, not because they let the government borrow more of their money, but because we let the tax cuts kick in immediately before employers had an opportunity to address their withholdings. So you'll be receiving a larger tax return this year because you actually got your taxes cut. And I think people are going to see the impact of it and really feel it for the first time when they realize how much they're getting back on their tax return.
Yeah, I do remember that. It's kind of an attack on the amount of the tax return back then, but people were getting more back in their check because it was an immediate increase in their checks. But for somebody I had a friend at the time that I talked to, and he was hourly, and so he didn't notice it because his hours changed every week, so his check always changed. And so unfortunately, it was a win that was hard to get across to the American people, that the win was there. It was hard. It was a tough win to sell. And so I think the way it's being done this time is going to be a much easier way to sell a win like this.
We always joke one of the major obstacles the taxpayer movement has had has been direct deposit and withholdings, because people aren't necessarily aware of how they're not seeing their paycheck in their hand every week, and they're not waiting to the end of the year to send a big fat check to the government to be fully aware of just how much in taxes they're paying. So it is a practical reality we have to deal with, is that a lot of people are budgeting, living paycheck to paycheck or month to month on a budget, and they're seeing it, how it impacts them there. That's where they will see the tax. I think the largest public reaction to the tax cuts will likely come from when they see their larger tax return this year.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. There was also an adjustment on the 2025 jobs that were created. That was about an adjustment downward revision of about 584,000 jobs for 2025. Can you speak to that and kind of compare it to what occurred under the Biden administration as well?
Yeah, as we were saying, I think there is a bit of a, we should expect that there was the hangover effect from the 2024, the tail end of the Biden administration. I think, creating some uncertainty out there as we still are awaiting the Supreme Court decision on the president's tariff policy. I think will obviously have a large impact, and in anticipating how hiring decisions are getting made, as you're essentially talking, what are the costs of inputs for businesses. And I think in addition to all of this too, you have the president's immigration policy and deportations, I think, are creating uncertainty along the numbers that require constant updating. But I think the important takeaway here, the major beat this month for January, largely defying expectations, that all signs are now, I think, headed in the right direction on the economy, where we are seeing prices start to come down, wages increasing, economic growth kicking in, larger tax cuts for individuals, and as we're seeing now, better job hiring numbers, high labor participation rate.
So, what is your advice to conservatives and Republicans as we go into the midterms on how to sell the bill? Because I don't really hear anyone talking about it as much as I think that they could and should be. And the media, I mean, let's just be frank, has lied about it endlessly and made this bill, as well as the 2017 Tax Cuts and Jobs Act, simply a bill for tax cuts for millionaires and billionaires. And this bill, more than any other bill, goes to the very heart of middle class, from the small business tax cuts to no tax on tips, no tax on overtime, no tax on Social Security, a larger standard deduction, the child care tax credit being expanded. I mean, those are all middle class things. I don't know of millionaires and billionaires that can participate in those pieces of this legislation.
No, and you're right. And of course, we're going to have to deal with the Democrats and the media lying about it, or worse, not covering it. We have a great piece at Americans for Tax Reform today, running in Real Clear Markets, where we interview on expensing a barbecue joint owner in Nashville, who's an award-winning barbecue pitmaster. And he talked about the importance of expensing for his business, how it's let him reinvest in equipment. This is for people who aren't aware, the basic idea that companies can take a 100% deduction on new equipment purchases and take that tax cut immediately. So for him in his restaurant, it's allowing him to build out his facility, to hire more workers, and to bring down prices for his consumers. This is exactly what we want to see taking place in businesses across the country. And you get these stories only by going and talking with them, which the media does not want to do, because the reality is millions of Americans are benefiting from these provisions. This week, I think a great thing conservatives have done that the speaker has put together is a calendar promoting different provisions of the bill each week. This week, they're talking about the senior deduction. And I think this is great because you have to educate the public. And one of the key things conservatives should be pointing out is that this is a new tax deduction, not a credit for seniors. So they're allowing seniors to keep more of their own money, not sending checks to people as Democrats propose. That's less government, less reliant on government, and letting seniors prepare for retirement by keeping more of their own money. Common sense policy, very popular, and Republicans should be driving that message home.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you all are doing that. It's definitely those, it kind of tends to be an automatic for conservatives to just talk about the numbers and whip out the income statements and the balance sheets. But when you bring a real story of a small business owner who is directly benefited and can talk about expanding the business and investing in employees and hiring new people and giving, raises, expanding benefits, that's where you start to help Americans connect the dots from the policy in DC to actually, to them, to their personal paychecks. And I think that's so important, and we don't do enough of it on our side.
And I know you all do great work on that as well. At Americans for Tax Reform, we're helping collect just these exact type of testimonials. I'd encourage everyone to go to atr.org/list, where they can see the testimonials we're collecting and our explanation of just what the different provisions of this bill are. Find out how it impacts you.
Yeah, wanted to ask one other thing on the jobs numbers. We saw construction employment jump by 33,000 jobs. First of all, I think that's fantastic, including 25,000 in the non-residential specialty trades. That's the biggest increase in 5 years. What do you think that kind of tea leaves tells you about investing in the U.S.?
Yeah, I think what you're seeing is that an increased investment, as we talked about before, like largely being driven from the impact of this tax bill. Also, as we talk about the housing crisis to see, and I think the commercial real estate market starting to come back, even from when it's been impacted from COVID, but starting to see these industries hire again, and expansion here in construction, I think is a very welcome sight, and something we should be paying attention to.
Excellent. Well, Mike, thanks so much for joining us. Why don't you give us the website again and tell us where we can follow you on social media?
Sure. Encourage everyone to go to atr.org and atr.org/list to see specifically how the working family tax cut impacts them and the testimonials from all the Americans and businesses across the country who are benefiting from this. You can follow me on Twitter at Mike Palicz.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much for tuning in to join us on Main Street Matters, America's small business megaphone. Main Street Matters is part of the Salem Podcast Network. New episodes debut every Wednesday and Friday. You can subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast from, and we will be back soon with another episode. Bye for now.